So before we start today's show, y'all, I went outside where we are located here and I took a photo of what used to be Black Lives Matter Plaza. Now, when you used to go to Black Lives Matter Plaza, you used to see color. Come on. You used to see color. You used to see, the letters Black Lives Matter there in gold. Well, now when you go to Black Lives Matter Plaza, it looks just like the Republican Party, pale, no color. This is emblematic of today's Republican Party. They're the ones who forced Washington, D.C. to tear apart this memorial. It is an effort by them to erase us, erase monuments. National Park Service, what did they do? They removed Harriet Tubman's photo and quote from their website, replacing with images of Postal Service stamps that highlight black-white cooperation in the secret network and that feature Tubman among other abolitionists of both races. Now, this goes right the pattern, because remember, the attack on DEI led to them removing the pages of Jackie Robinson and what his role played in the U.S. Army, removing Medgar Evers and others as well, removing historic women who in combat. I mean, we go on and on and on. What we have is a whitewash. We have Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, Elon Musk, and MAGA. They really want this to be a white country. This is really a throwback to Jim Crow. How they're attacking books, the Navy. They announced all of these different books that they are whacking as well. We can go on and on and on. So this is truly about erasure, because for them, this is a white country. Chicago pastor Reverend Otis Moss III recently told his congregation, had a sermon and said, "We will not be erased." Here's some of that.
On Thursday, the Trump administration signed an executive order entitled, quote, "Restoring Truth and Sanity to American History." This order targets two institutions, the Smithsonian Institution and the Department of Interior. This order states, over the past decade, Americans have witnessed a concerted and widespread effort to rewrite American history. This revisionist movement seeks to undermine the remarkable achievements of the United States by casting the founding principles and historical milestones in a negative light. Human happiness is reconstructed as inherently racist, sexist, and oppressive, end of quote. The executive order takes specific aim at the National Museum of African American History and the Museum of Women's History that is yet to be built in the United States in Washington, D.C. The order specifically directs Vice President J.D. Vance. As I mentioned previously in the 5 minutes, he is an acolyte of the so-called philosopher and anti-democratic promoter Curtis Yarvin, who believes that some races are built for servitude. And also Peter Thiel, who is a billionaire funder of J.D. Vance. And it should be noted that he is a South African, Afrikaner, and J.D. Vance has been instructed by the person who occupies the White House currently, but not permanently, named Trump, to root out any American divisive ideology and exhibits that make America look bad. This executive order also seeks to reinstall Confederate monuments taken down during the Black Lives Matter movement.
Joining us right now is Reverend Dr. Otis Moss III, joining us from Chicago. Of course, I wore the appropriate attire today, so glad to have you on the show, Fred. So let's, here's the deal. Product 2025 lays all this out. This was all by design. I laid all of this out. I lay all of this out in my book, White Fear. Okay, so the book ban in Florida, all of these different things. We saw in 2000, here's the real deal. These white folks have been mad because they are pissed off with the racial reckoning that took place with the murder of George Floyd. They attacked Black Lives Matter in 2021. They attacked CRT and used it during the election in 2022. They attacked woke in 2023. They attacked DEI in 2024. It's fundamentally clear. Anybody who doesn't see this is purposely blind and crazy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We've witnessed this over and over again with this administration. But this is a movement by not only conservative forces, but I call them Confederate fanboys. And this executive order was specifically targeting the National Museum of African American History. But it was also designed as a distraction because the day before, the news cycle was about Signal Gate, and then an executive order targeting, again, Black people. And it is our responsibility as people of faith, as Black people, to ensure that no one erases our history. And that is why we place the National African American Museum, the National Museum of African American History, into our budget. We had a church conference right in the middle of worship and said, all those in favor of doing this, because we will not be erased.
But there is a problem here, Pastor, and that is there is something called the Wilson Center. The Wilson Center was created by Congress. It is a think tank. The Wilson Center is made up of Republicans and Democrats. And what Donald Trump did was he has shrunk this from 130 staffers to 4. So it technically still exists. One of the executive orders he launched targeted this, where he announced that, and again, this is something that Congress created, and he directed the elimination to the maximum extent consistent with applicable law of the Wilson Center and other federally funded entities. But here's what they've also now done. So the CEO of the Wilson Center, Republican, fired that person. They replaced the board, including Republicans who he appointed last time. But here's what they've also done. They're returning donor money. I am trying to warn people. This is what they're going to do to the Smithsonian, the National Museum of African American History and Culture. I believe that they're going to fire Lonnie Bunch. I believe that they're going to end up laying a lot of these people off. I believe that they want to completely destroy the #1 attended museum in Washington, D.C., because they do not like the fact that it tells the true story of America.
I agree with you, Roland, that there is a concerted effort in reference to erasure. One of the challenges that they will face is that the Board of Regents is 17 individuals who also are a variety of people, some Democrat, independent, you name it. This is a public-private partnership, and we have authority in terms of protecting this institution. And that is why I believe that faith communities should support the museum and educate the congregation about what is happening. 2, that we have to also create spaces where we are teaching history. Children's Defense Fund does a tremendous job with what is called freedom schools during the summertime. This is a 5-alarm fire for our community, to understand that there are forces at work. And this didn't happen last year. This didn't happen 10 years ago. Ever since the civil rights freedom movement, there has been a concerted effort to return America to a particular moment, mythic moment in history. And the civil rights movement was an interruption of a white supremacist project. And they have been trying to regain power since then. I did a piece for the church talking about Curtis Yarvin, the anti-democratic so-called philosopher who influenced Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel, who then funded J.D. Vance, and Curtis Yarvin has clear white supremacist ideology. I did another piece about Lewis Powell. Lewis Powell, who wrote The Attack on the American Free Market System, because he believed that the civil rights movement, what black churches were doing, was destroying America. That was 1971. And his memo that he wrote in 1971 went viral before there was anything we call viral.
You said Lewis Powell?
Yeah, Lewis Powell. And Joseph Coors read his memo. When Joseph Coors read the memo, he then took the money from the Coors beer dynasty that he was a part of and put that money to build what? The Heritage Foundation.
Boom.
These people have been working because they witnessed what black people did when we organized. And they are trying to, quote unquote, take back what they think mythically is theirs. And we have to understand some of the puppet masters that are behind the puppet who is in the White House.
The reason, and I've laid this out in the show, that the reason that they are so adamant about this is because the Black Lives Matter movement was the first time in American history that a black movement had a majority of Americans supporting it. What they saw, never before in the history of America has a black movement ever had a majority of Americans agreeing with it. Not Dr. King, not A. Philip Randolph, nobody. And what they saw was, they said, you take that, you take with America becoming a nation, majority of people of color by 2043, depending upon what Latinos do, whether they want to call themselves white Hispanics or not. And all of a sudden, you had young white people, young Latinos, Asian Americans, who now were seeing, as Paul Harvey would say, the rest of the story. And so these conservatives said, oh, no, hell no. We cannot have the hearts and minds of non-black people now learning the true history of America. So they start attacking the 1619 Project. Trump comes out with the 17, supporting by also Robert Woodson, the 1776 Project. Oh, we're going to create this garden of American heroes. His defending of them removing and changing the names of military bases and removing Confederate symbols and plaques. After 10 black people were killed in Buffalo, you only had one Republican, then Illinois Congressman Adam Kinzinger, support a resolution calling for the end of racism and the end of the target of neo-Nazis and white supremacy. Republicans are like, no, we ain't voting for that. And so they saw a new generation embracing Black Lives Matter, and they said, oh, we got to destroy all of this. And so they went after BLM. They followed the money. They focused on dissension. You had right-wingers who were infiltrating various events, starting fires, creating mayhem, blaming BLM. Oh, it's Antifa. Then you begin to see, again, all the attacks. It was because they said, this thing has gotten too far, and that's when the book bans. That's when the targeting of that. And so they said, we have to completely destroy the entire black civil rights and economic rights, social justice infrastructure if we are going to maintain this thing for another 50 to 100 years.
You know, this is why it's so important what you do, Roland. You're creating an ecosystem of not only education, but an ecosystem of information, because one of the aspects of this that we need to understand is what is called techno-capitalism, or this new movement by Silicon Valley to create an ecosystem that assists those who are, quote unquote, in power or think they're in power. And they are utilizing that ecosystem, an ecosystem that drives fear, an ecosystem that continues this mythology that makes white people think that they're actually white, the social construction, an ecosystem that is what I call the digital Henrietta Lacks syndrome, where they're taking our data and they say that they own it. And then in the process, they are attempting an erasure of black people. But this has been consistent in America since we have been here. The mythology and the removal of our contributions. And that is why we cannot depend on other people to tell our story. We need what you are doing. We need what other people are doing in terms of creating an ecosystem of education. And that's why I believe that churches and mosques and synagogues and community spaces must band together to create spaces where we are telling the story. I love the African adage that is told that why is it that the lion is always losing in every story? And the story that the old man shares back with a young child is simply this: when the lion learns to tell his own story, he will be the hero of the story. Otherwise, the hunter will always come out on top. And we've got to tell our own story.
Yep. That's one of the reasons why I have been imploring our people. We've got to support Black-owned media because we're going to be asking somebody else to tell our story. People are all up in arms and upset when MSNBC canceled Joy Ann Reid. And what I said is, when you own it, the only person who can cancel you is God.
That's right.
Well, what you laid out is critically important. And here's what I hope. And this is the last question for you. What is your message to other black churches? Because as I've traveled the country, and look, our numbers have been exploding with our subscribers. Somebody put together a chart, and the chart that they put together sort of laid out who has seen the growth on YouTube since the inauguration. And they showed folks. They put a blue dot. They broke it down by red and blue, Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, however you want to frame that. Matter of fact, I had my digital guy Keenan change it to put a black bar on ours. Because I said that's where we land. But the whole point here is that when you look at the growth over since the first quarter, we have been able to dramatically increase our following. And in fact, out of all the people, so this was the chart, fastest growing political and non-political adjacent YouTube channels. We were number 21, ahead of the Bulwark, Bernie Sanders, Piers Morgan, Benny Johnson, Jordan Peterson, Robert Reich, Glenn Kirshner, the New York Post, Sam Cedar, Bill O'Reilly, Vox, the Rubin Report, all these people. The reason this is important because if we are depending upon folk who don't look like us, who think like us, then what happens is, to your point, they control the narrative, but more importantly, they control the information flow to the hearts and minds. And so with them, we already see this happening with the algorithm on all the social media channels because you click one thing and they're going to flood your feed, or with Elon Musk now just force feeding you right-wing content. We have to have a counter.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why I'm excited about what you are doing. And my message to churches across the nation, and I first have to give this addendum in reference to this, that there's the black church tradition, and then there are churches that have black people. The black church tradition is the tradition of Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, is the tradition of Fannie Lou Hamer, is the tradition of Martin King, a prophetic tradition that seeks to alleviate suffering of not only black people, but all people. There are churches that have black people in them, and they are committed to a white evangelical, or sometimes really a capitalism and ecclesiastical garments. So for those that are part of the black church tradition, we have a responsibility. We stand on the shoulders of others. So it is our responsibility to tell our story. It's our responsibility to support the Smithsonian. It's our responsibility to share with our congregants what you're doing, Roland, and other forms of independent media. It's our responsibility to educate appropriately. And if you don't have the information, please don't stand up in the pulpit and act like you do. Find someone who does, pick up something known as a book, read it, get the information, and bring in the necessary experts who can break down certain issues and policies so that our community can be educated effectively. The Black church is one of the few spaces we completely control. No one can cut off a grant and say to us, you can't do that. We control it. And when the KKK wanted to bomb, they were not bombing NAACP offices. They bombed churches because they were Black controlled. They bombed, yes, Tulsa in terms of other spaces in there, but that was also because it was Black controlled. So we need to recognize that we already have power. And the response that is happening right now is because they witness what happens when Black people are organized, faithful, praying, and know that there is a vision to build, in the words of W.E.B. Du Bois, the yet to be United States of America.
The reason I have a mural in my office called hashtag Black on Media Matters, y'all should have a video. The reason on that mural we put this whole thing together is ode to Black on Media. The reason you do not see the cover of Ida B. Well Barnett's newspaper is because not only did they firebomb churches, they firebombed her newspaper.
That's right.
She was writing about lynchings. Then they put a bounty on her head. And so, yes, when you cut off the information flow, then you're able to control the medium. So you laid it out there. So I look forward to what the heck. I think I need to come back to Chicago and visit Trinity. And we need to do something together with my book, White Fear.
Let's do it. Let's do a book signing. Let's have you educate. You do such a great job, Roland. We really appreciate you. The folks at Trinity love you. And we're just continue to do what you're doing, brother. You have a ministry, a prophetic media ministry that is transforming people's lives, and we are grateful.
Appreciate it, Frat. Thanks a bunch. We'll chat soon.
All right. Take care.
All right. Go to panel here. I mean, this is Teresa, you're in communications. And it's called mass media for a reason. There's a reason why it's called mass media. And we have to wake up to understand that everything that we see, billboards, television commercials, shows, radio programs, everything, media is designed to impact this.
Yeah, mass media is very important. As the brother from Trinity Church was actually explaining, one, I have to say congratulations to the analytics there as it relates to your podcast, because that is a huge step. And actually understand, probably the only media outlet that's really independently owned. So congratulations to that.
Well, guess what? Ain't nobody else in this list Black other than, well, she ain't Black. They got Candace Owens on here. So yeah, I'm the only Black person on here.
Yeah, the real Roland Martin, the real Black. But yeah, as we talk about just, even mass media in some of those areas, from digital, print, the podcasting, but being consistent is always, the number one point into making sure that, people are following, people are listening, they're paying attention. And I think that's how history started, right? They started in radio, started in print. And once the voice was cut, especially Black voices were cut in history, what happened? Riots started to happen, more out of control, narratives was pushed for different directions. And so the importance of protecting communications really means having an educated sender. And I think a lot of people, watch these different podcasts and shows because they're looking for thought leaders to guide them to different perspectives that they may not know. So it is, incumbents of us, I could even say with this show, I've been on here probably 4+ years, but I'm not on here because I look good. I'm on here because I'm bringing, and like our other panels, something to the table from based upon experience and the education that we receive. So it's in tandem for us to give back. More importantly, each and every day.
Hey folks, if y'all are having some issues with audio, it's not us. We're sending a clean feed. So some folks are saying you should log out of YouTube or sign out and then sign back in. So again, that's not on us. So that's on them. The thing here, this erasure issue, Kelly, is so important because it is by design. They want, again, if you strip it away, if you change the narrative, then you now are creating an alternative facts for a whole new generation, which is how we got here to the first place. All these white folks in this country and lots of black folks, them controlling the education system, force feeding us how great and wonderful the founding fathers were and how they loved and cared for all mankind and others. Well, we begin to learn that a lot of that was BS, but that's what happens when you learn true history, not his story.
Definitely. I think that a racist's biggest fear, outside of the fears delineated very well in your book, Roland, is a grandchild asking questions, right? And we see that in what you just outlined with the Smithsonian and our museums and our places of entertainment that are being attacked and our history trying to be revised, but you also see it, as you've also said on this show, in our education system. I was actually just seeing a TikTok where a teacher, obviously the camera was facing her, so the children were not videoed, but they were arguing with the teacher because they had learned before coming to her class that the enslaved were paid. And they legit thought that slaves were employees of plantations and the like. It's already starting. This revisionist history has already started because these babies had been asking questions that, frankly, their grandparents can't answer without them becoming the villain, right? And when you see my favorite museum in DC, for sure, I call it the Blacksonian, being under attack, not because it's spewing misinformation, not because it's giving alternative facts or anything like that, but because it's really one of the few, if not the only, museum in the Smithsonian conglomerate that is as accurate and as forthcoming as it is. And it is in your face, right? You have no choice but to ask questions when you are in that museum. You have no choice but to learn something new every time you go in, because that's just how much history, that's just how much information has been hidden and frankly tried to be destroyed by others so that we don't know what's going on. So it is not surprising to me that history is being under attack. What I do think should be happening is the preservation of it, such as what you're doing with your show, TikTokers out there, social media influencers out there trying to preserve history, preserve fact. But I don't think that this is going to be a situation in which Trump is going to win or conservatives are going to win. It's going to be an uphill battle, but I think we'll come out on top.
Well, Makongo, the reason what Reverend Dr. Otis Moss talked about, we're talking about here, we're going to continue the conversation with Blavity founder CEO Morgan DeBaun after this next break, is something that many people have talked about, including Marcus Garvey in Message to the People, the Course of African Philosophy, edited by Tony Martin. This is what Marcus Garvey said in Lesson 16. Propaganda. Propaganda means to prepare or to make known extensively some particular phase of human intelligence. The desire is to convert or influence the people to the acceptance of the truth of that particular intelligence that is sought to be spread among them. Propaganda can be true or false in its origin or intent, but it is always directed at the public for the purpose of winning the support of that public to the sentiment expressed in the propaganda. He then goes on to say, propaganda is, as I said earlier, propaganda is all around you to make you buy a special brand of cigarettes, although no good, but advertised to be the best, to make you drink or use a certain brand of tea, telling you of its wonderful qualities and its everlasting benefits, when thee is absolutely nothing to it, and so on. He then also says the press, cinema, pulpit, schoolroom are all propaganda agencies for one thing or the other. The pulpit carries religious propaganda. He says the press carries out written propaganda. The platform carries on oral propaganda. The cinema carries out demonstrative propaganda. The white man is a great propagandist. He fully and completely realizes the value of propaganda. Therefore, you must organize your propaganda to undo the propaganda of other people. But here's something else that I thought jumped out that I really think is important. Tear from your walls all pictures that glorify other races. Tear up and burn every bit of propaganda that does not carry your idea of things. Treat them as trash. That sort of evokes for me the scene from Do the Right Thing when he said, Sal, why you ain't got no black people on the wall? But here's the thing right here. Have your own newspapers, your own artists, your own sculptors, your own pulpits, your own platforms. Print your own books and show your own motion pictures and sculpture your own subjects. Never accept as yours subjects of another race, but glorify all the good in yourselves. Finally, watch the newspapers, magazines, and journals daily for propaganda against your race or your institutions. It says particularly against the UNIA. Rush into print immediately a defense of your race institutions and organizations from any attack. Never allow an insult propagated to go unanswered by you. This is why we talk about why we must not just sit back and wait to see what Trump and Doge and Musk and J.D. Vance are going to do. They are going to attack the National Museum of African American History and Culture. They're going to attack every institution. We must right now be mobilized and organized to prepare what our response is going to be. And in fact, not even wait for them to do it, to go on the offense.
Wow, that whole part of what you read from Marcus Garvey was so powerful. But that last part, it really explains what you mean when people say, well, why are you talking about this? Why are you talking about that? And like you said, the algorithms out there, people need to see that we are responding to the nonsense that's out there because it feeds into the algorithms. And if people don't understand what he's saying about propaganda, Trump, his whole brain, his whole mindset is about propaganda. Hitler said, he who controls the media controls the race. And that's why Trump and Republicans know that right or wrong, whether they repeat something long enough, people are going to start saying it. Whether they repeat something long enough, people are going to start believing it and acting accordingly. And we're too spent in so many different spaces not bringing it together. And that's why the Black Star Network is so important, because if we don't do this, particularly what he was saying about, tearing down things that don't represent you and make sure that you have a rapid response team when people are trying to denigrate you. Look at what they're throwing at us every single day. How many Black outlets today have responded to we've been talking about today about Harriet Tubman, that what's been talking about South Sudanese visas being retracted? Like, the responses can't come by Friday. They have to come in real time. And if we don't do this, we're going to lose the narrative. What you said, Roland, in terms of how you laid out why there are all of these attacks on, Black history and everything, it came from the support of the Black Lives Matter movement. People are not connecting those dots. People are acting like, well, Black Lives Matter was over, it was then, and now we're just on to something else. And it's all a system. And if people like you who aren't out here to identify what we're dealing with, it's like James Baldwin said, if you don't know what's happening behind you, you can't understand what's happening around you. And so we have to continue to build these platforms. We have to continue to support books like White Fear. I'm so glad you asked Reverend Moss that last question about other Black churches, because like you said, there are Black churches and then there are Black preachers in churches. It's night and day. And we have to continue to build together to control our own information structure and platforms. And nobody's leading it better than you.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.